Apple accidentally exposed Android's biggest weakness years ago. Most people thought the battle between iPhone and Android was about cameras, specs, or brand loyalty. It wasn't. The real war was happening underneath every app you open, every photo you upload, and every video you post. And the uncomfortable truth is that even when Android phones have better hardware, many of the apps people use every day still feel smoother, cleaner, and more polished on iPhone. What makes this story even stranger is that Android dominates the world. It has far more users, far more devices, far more downloads. Yet somehow, the platform with fewer users often gets the better app experience. And once you see why, you start realizing this was never really a fair fight. The first thing that shocked me was the scale difference. Every year, Apple releases only a handful of iPhones. 4, maybe 5 models. That's it. Now compare that to Android. Not one Android company. All of Android. Samsung, Google, Xiaomi, Oppo, Vivo, Realme, Honor, Nothing, Motorola, OnePlus, hundreds of brands, thousands of devices. Industry estimates put the number of active Android device variations in the tens of millions worldwide across different manufacturers, hardware combinations, screen sizes, processors, and software versions. Think about that for a second. If you're building an app for iPhone, you're preparing for a small group of devices that are remarkably similar. If you're building an app for Android, you're preparing for what feels like an entire planet. And that's where the problem begins. Imagine you're a developer creating a social media app. On iPhone, you know almost exactly what screen sizes you'll encounter. You know the processor family. You know how memory is managed. You know what operating system most users are running. The environment is controlled, predictable, stable. Now switch to Android. Suddenly you're dealing with dozens of screen dimensions, different refresh rates, different camera systems, different memory capacities, different chip architectures, foldable phones, flip phones, budget phones, gaming phones. One user may have a flagship with massive memory and cutting-edge silicon. Another may have an entry-level device with a fraction of the resources. Both expect your app to work flawlessly. And if it doesn't, guess who gets blamed? Not the phone manufacturer, not the operating system, your app. That's why many developers describe Android optimization as trying to satisfy thousands of customers with completely different expectations at the same time. The craziest part is that hardware isn't even the biggest challenge. The processor situation might be even worse. Apple builds its own chips. Every modern iPhone runs on Apple-designed silicon. That means software engineers know exactly what hardware they're targeting. The optimization opportunities become enormous. Android doesn't have that luxury. Some devices use Qualcomm chips. Others use MediaTek. Others use Samsung Exynos. Google uses Tensor. Each platform behaves differently. Each has unique performance characteristics. Each requires testing. Each introduces potential issues. And every extra variable increases complexity. This is where one of the biggest myths in tech starts falling apart. People often assume stronger hardware automatically guarantees a better experience. Not necessarily. A developer would usually rather optimize for one known environment than 50 unknown ones. Consistency often beats raw power. That's why you can sometimes see an iPhone outperforming Android phones that look superior on paper. Not because the hardware is magically stronger, because the software knows exactly where it's running. And then we get to cameras. This is where the debate becomes controversial. Because if you've ever uploaded a story, recorded a TikTok, or posted an Instagram reel from both platforms, you've probably noticed something. The iPhone version often looks better. Not always, but often enough that millions of people notice it. For years, Android fans argued this was marketing, that the difference was exaggerated, that flagship Android cameras were already superior, and in many cases they are. The problem is that the camera app isn't the whole story. A phone manufacturer can spend years perfecting image processing inside its native camera application. But third-party apps don't always get access to all of that magic. Many Android developers have explained that when an app accesses the camera, it often interacts through layers of abstraction designed to support countless hardware combinations. The result? The photo taken in your phone's camera app might look incredible. The same image captured through a social media app might not. On iPhone, developers are working with a much more unified camera system. The consistency makes optimization dramatically easier. This explains something that has confused users for years. Why can two phones produce similar photos in their camera apps, yet look completely different when uploaded to social media? Because the battle isn't happening in the camera hardware. It's happening in the software pipeline. And that's where Apple's control starts paying off again. Then there's the update problem. This might be the most underrated advantage Apple has. When Apple releases a new version of iOS, millions of users receive it almost immediately. Within months, a huge percentage of iPhones are running the latest software. Developers love this because it lets them move forward, use new tools, use new APIs, build around modern features, push technology faster. Android doesn't work like that. Google creates Android, but phone manufacturers customize it. Then carriers sometimes get involved. Then regional versions appear. Then rollout schedules vary. Then older devices wait. Then budget devices wait even longer. The result is fragmentation. A developer isn't building for one Android version. They're building for many Android versions simultaneously. Some users are running the newest release. Others are years behind, which means developers often need to support older technologies much longer than they'd like. That adds code. More code creates complexity. Complexity creates bugs. Bugs create headaches. And suddenly optimization becomes significantly harder. One developer compared it to building a bridge that has to connect multiple generations of technology at the same time. It's possible, but it's much harder. What's fascinating is that even some Google apps have occasionally felt more polished on iPhone than on Android. That statement sounds ridiculous at first. Google created Android. How could that happen? But when you think about the realities developers face, it starts making sense. A stable, predictable environment often allows teams to move faster and refine experiences more efficiently. The irony is almost painful. The company behind Android sometimes benefits from the simplicity of iOS. Now here's where things get really controversial. Because some people insist this entire discussion is outdated. They'll point to modern flagship Android phones and say the gap is gone. And honestly, they're partly right. Android has improved dramatically. Today's flagship devices are better optimized than ever. Google has invested heavily in reducing fragmentation. Manufacturers have become more sophisticated. Development tools are stronger. Testing environments are better. The experience is vastly improved compared to years ago. But improvement isn't the same as elimination. The core challenge still exists. Android remains an ecosystem built around choice. And choice comes with trade-offs. The more freedom you allow, the harder standardization becomes. Apple chose control. Android chose openness. Neither approach is inherently superior, but one approach is undeniably easier to optimize. And that leads to the final piece of the puzzle: money. Because at the end of the day, developers aren't just engineers. They're businesses. Businesses follow incentives. And the numbers tell a fascinating story. Android generates more downloads globally, far more. Yet iPhone users consistently spend more on apps, subscriptions, digital purchases, and premium services. Recent industry data showed Apple's App Store generating well over $100 billion annually, while Google Play generated less than half that amount. Think about what that means. If you're running a company with limited resources, where do you focus first? The platform generating the most revenue. It's not personal, it's economics. Many companies quietly adopt an iOS-first strategy. Launch on iPhone first. Optimize for iPhone first. Refine the experience. Then expand. That doesn't mean Android gets ignored. Far from it. But it does mean the platform with higher monetization often receives attention earlier, and that creates a feedback loop. Developers prioritize iOS. Apps feel polished. Users notice. More spending happens. Developers prioritize iOS again. The cycle continues. What's amazing is that none of this means Android is worse. In some areas, Android is objectively more advanced, more customizable, more flexible, more experimental. Foldables emerged there first. Hardware innovation often happens there first. AI features frequently appear there first. The platform moves faster because it has more players pushing boundaries. But that same freedom creates complexity, and complexity is the enemy of optimization. That's the trade-off nobody talks about. The reason iPhone apps often feel smoother isn't because Apple discovered some secret formula. It's because Apple simplified the battlefield. Fewer devices, fewer variables, fewer surprises. Developers know what they're building for. Android chose the opposite path. Maximum variety, maximum flexibility, maximum choice. And while that approach unlocked incredible innovation, it also created a challenge that has followed Android for years. Every new device, every new screen, every new chip, every new software variation adds another layer to an already massive puzzle. So the next time someone says iOS apps are better optimized, they're usually not saying Android hardware is worse. They're pointing to something much deeper. One ecosystem was built for consistency. The other was built for possibility. And for developers trying to make one app work perfectly everywhere, consistency is often the most powerful feature of all.
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the latest update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end and see you in the next video.